Welcome back to part 3 of episode 2, the last part of this very, very good documentary. Very, very sad, but very, very good documentary. As always, shout out to Motorsport Madness with the video. All credit goes to him. And guys, these last 30 minutes, I'm not sure what to expect. Obviously, last episode was kind of crazy because remember, last episode, it was just me pissed off a lot. And it was just me irritated over some of the decisions that were going on. I could have been easily prevented if we just followed the rules. If we took more thought into our actions and all. But it's good to see you guys as always. Happy Thursday. Hopefully this video should be coming out for you guys later on today. I'm recording this like around 2 something, so hopefully around later today. A few hours it should be coming out for you guys. That's the intro. I'm not gonna keep you guys waiting. Y'all ain't trying to wait. I ain't trying to wait. Let's go ahead and let's hop straight into it. As always, if you are new to the channel, don't forget to like that video and sub as well to the lovely channel. Do appreciate you guys, man. Alright, last part, man. Just learn about Wolfgang. Jo Schlesser. 68 French Grand Prix.
In modern F1, experimental cars competing in Grand Prix races is almost unthinkable. But in the past, when regulations weren't so strict, experimental F1 cars was a fairly common sight. Notable examples include the Brabham BT46 fan car, the 6-wheel Tyrrell P34,
we know about that.
the gas turbine powered Lotus 56B, amongst many others. A somewhat forgotten experimental design appeared at the French Grand Prix in 1968, the white and red Honda RA302. Honda was in its 4th season in Formula 1 and had enjoyed decent amount of success by 1968, with 2 wins and a podium finish at Kyalami in 1967. For 1968, Honda entered the RA301, a successor to the brilliant RA300 design the previous year. However, it was a disaster, and it retired from the 4 out of the first 4 races that it had entered in 1968, with the experienced John Surtees at the wheel.
Hey, John Surtees.
The experimental 302 was designed to replace the poor-performing 301 and was also personally ordered by Soichiro Honda, who was keen to develop an air-cooled engine for their F1 cars. The new Honda design featured an air-cooled 3-litre V8 and magnesium-skinned body design, compared to the water-cooled 3-litre V12 and conventional aluminium chassis and body of the earlier 301.
I'm not gonna cap. The specs he was going on about, they sounded so fire. I really couldn't tell you about them. But they sounded amazing. Like it sounded so, I'm not there yet. I ain't there yet. But listen. The way he was describing the car, hey, I was just locked in.
This design was built not only to be more reliable, but also lighter due to the significant amount of magnesium used, which would have given it slightly more speed. John Surtees would think otherwise, and after initial testing at Silverstone, refused to drive it again, labelling the 302 unsafe and a potential death trap due to its severe stability issues.
At least he knew.
This left Honda in a tricky situation, as the French Grand Prix was just weeks away and they had put in a heavy marketing campaign to showcase the 302 at that race weekend. Not wishing to risk a potential marketing disaster, Honda instead decided to enter the 302 under the Honda France brand, complete with its own team and driver. That driver was a 40-year-old debutant, Jo Schlesser. Whilst he may have been inexperienced in F1, Jo was a capable sports car driver who took part in 7 Le Mans 24-hour races over a 10-year period, and made 3 appearances in NASCAR in 1964.
I have a bad feeling about this one. I have a real bad feeling about this one. John Surtees mentioned that the car was unsafe, and it's a potential death trap. I know he said like the French Grand Prix was like weeks away, stuff like that, and I'm assuming it's not enough time for him to really modify it to the way that I guess it would fit John Surtees. So obviously they have to bring in a guy who I could say has some experience,
Jo was
stuff
no
like
stranger
that.
to open wheel racing either, as he had previously taken part in non-championship F1 events in lesser powerful F2 cars, and took part in both the 1966 and 67 German Grand Prix whilst driving a Matra F2 car, as both F1 and F2 races took place at the same time at the Nürburgring. Despite his age, Jo Schlesser was delighted to be offered the chance of taking part in his first ever Formula 1 championship event in a Grand Prix car. The The venue was the Rouen-les-Arcs circuit, situated in northwest France, and was one of the fastest circuits on the calendar at the time, especially its near flat-out downhill sequence from turn 1 to 4, which had the nickname the Sea Flare, or the Six Brothers. However, it did have a reputation for severe accidents, and just a year prior, French touring car driver Jean-Claude Bernasconi was killed in an accident whilst negotiating this dangerous sequence of fast corners.
Jeez.
Throughout practice, Schlesser struggled to get to grips with the 302 and could only qualify 16th and second to last, while Surtees in the older 301 managed 7th on the grid. The race got underway on Sunday the 7th of July, and the opening 2 laps were rather an eventful affair, with the Ferrari of Jackie Ickx leading as the pack came around to begin the 3rd lap and tackled the fearsome 6 Ferrer section once again. The excited crowd watched on as another fantastic Formula 1 race unfolded in front of them. On this 3rd lap, the excitement was shattered and replaced by one of the most horrific scenes in F1 history. John Surtees' earlier prophecy had just become a reality.
Holy crap.
Jo Schlesser.
So, we know back then, like, it was hard for, like, cars to know, like, or people or drivers to know back then, like, there's an incident or something like that on the tracks. I didn't want to say anything about that. But I need to just hear more right quick. I'm sorry.
Approached the extremely fast right-hander towards the end of the fearsome downhill section. He suddenly lost control of the unstable Honda and spun right off the circuit at approximately 130 to 140 miles per hour, which seems fast, but was actually slow for most F1 cars, as Joe took the first part of the race cautiously to get more used to the car. The Honda rode up the embankment, injuring 5 spectators standing close behind the fence line. The impact flipped the Honda upside down, and in doing so ruptured the fuel tank, which had almost 200 litres of fuel still inside. In doing so, as soon as the fuel touched the hot components of the car, the 302 almost literally exploded in mid-air, spreading flames across the entire area. The car landed upside down, with Jo Schlesser trapped inside. As the field came across the developing disaster, they were met with a fearsome firestorm, with the flames reaching as high as 30 feet, and other drivers having no choice but to drive straight through the wall of fire. Fire marshals eventually arrived on the scene and worked quickly to extinguish the blaze. Equipped with regular water hoses, they quickly discovered that the water did nothing except make the fire worse.
Golly.
Do you remember what I mentioned earlier? This car had magnesium skinned bodywork.
Yeah.
Magnesium is a highly flammable material which can burn up to 3000 degrees Celsius and is almost completely resistant to water. So much so, the material was used in the manufacture of incendiary bombs during the Second World War and is still used as an igniter for thermite. The fire marshals were unaware of this extremely serious situation, and the fire continued to erupt with more violence every time they poured water onto the blaze, and they were not equipped with any equipment to deal with chemical fires. Even their fire retardant uniforms weren't enough to shield them from the extreme heat, which stopped any attempt to try and pull Joe out of the car. Eventually, the fire was out, which revealed the true extent of the violent scene. Jo Schlesser was finally pulled from the car, but it was too late. Jo Schlesser was dead, having suffered the unimaginable pain of being trapped inside a burning car.
I couldn't even imagine that, bro. I couldn't even.
Joe's wife, Annie Schlesser, who had been by his side throughout his racing career, was also in attendance that day and was extremely excited to witness her husband achieve his dream of becoming a Formula 1 driver. She was prevented from seeing the horrific sight of Joe's heavily burned body when he was brought back to the paddock. Annie was completely disturbed by the incident and spoke about suicide that very same evening, which she thankfully didn't go through with. Despite all of this, the the race carried on as if nothing had happened and was never stopped. Jackie Ickx won his first ever Grand Prix for Ferrari in what should have been an incredible achievement for the Belgian driver, but all the drivers saw what had happened and celebrations simply weren't possible.
Jo Schlesser died at the French Grand Prix in '68. I won. He was probably 38 or 39 years old. He was driving for the first time the new Honda Formula One. He killed himself in one of the high-speed corner, and it was only sadness. Only sadness.
Jo Schlesser was the fourth F1 driver to die in 1968. Two-time world champion and one of the greatest drivers of all time, Jim Clark, was killed during a Formula 2 race at Hockenheim in April after spinning off at high speed and collided with the trees deep within the Old Forest section. Mike Spence, who was driver for BRM in F1 that year, was killed during practice for that year's Indianapolis 500. And Ludovico Scarfiotti, who had been an F1 driver for Ferrari and Cooper since 1963, including winning the Italian Grand Prix in 1966, was killed during a hill climb event in Germany. This would prove to be the final nail in the coffin for the Rouen-Les circuit, which would never host an F1 race ever again. And after numerous accidents and economic issues, the circuit finally closed in 1994, with most of the old circuit, including the site of this tragic accident, now just sleepy French countryside roads. Honda faced most of the blame for the accident, and a black mark stained the popular Japanese brand. Undeterred, they continued to try and convince John Surtees to drive the car at the Italian Grand Prix later that year, which he rightfully so refused. Honda withdrew from.
And I don't blame John Surtees for not wanting to drive that car. I wouldn't either. I wouldn't want to drive that car that killed my teammate. I mean, John literally said it's unsafe and then a potential death trap. And look what happened. That was probably the worst one because, obviously they say Joe was trapped in the car. Like, I was trapped in the car and basically couldn't do anything. I hate it, man. That was the worst one.
F1 at the end of that same year in disgrace, and wouldn't be involved again in F1 until 1983, when it became an engine supplier, which began arguably the most successful era for the company, when it began to supply engines to Williams until 1987 and McLaren from 1988. Honda eventually returned as a team once again in 2006, and what has happened since could be a video in itself.
Yeah.
Jo Schlesser had a nephew, Jean-Louis Schlesser, who would go on to evoke his uncle's legacy by becoming a highly successful sports car driver. Finishing second behind the Jaguar Martin Brundle in his first season with Sauber Mercedes, he won the World Sports Car title in 1989 and 1990, sharing a second title with teammate Mauro Baldi. And in his last season in 1991, was teammates with a young new star in the making, Michael Schumacher. Jean-Louis also made 2 appearances in F1, with the second being the 1988 Italian Grand Prix, where he was famously involved in an accident which took Ayrton Senna out of the race, which single-handedly prevented McLaren from winning every race that year. Before his death, Joe shared a dream with a sports car teammate and best friend. That dream was to start a car company which would have a simple reputation of making good cars. That friend was Guy Ligier, who retired from racing soon after Joe's death. Ligier then worked hard to achieve the dream that they had both shared, and formed Ligier Cars. Ligier would eventually become a successful Formula 1 team between 1976 and 1996, establishing themselves as one of the most iconic manufacturers on the grid with the beautiful blue and white cars.
Yeah, that
especially
blue and white
during
looks
their
hard.
most successful season in 1980, where they finished second in the championship with the Ligier JS11-15. The 2 letters in the car's name being the initials of Jo Schlesser.
Yeah,
Every single one of Ligier's cars begin with the same 2 letters before the number, in tribute to Guy Ligier's late friend, who never got the chance to achieve that ambition.
That's so
This tradition continues to this day, which ensures the memory of Jo Schlesser will never ever be forgotten.
That's so tough, bro. That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. That's the best thing on. That's hard. That's hard, bro. I'm happy his name is still being able to get live, through the team, stuff like that. That's it's really, really good to see. Tom Pryce, 77 South African
The
Grand
only
Prix.
Welsh driver to ever win an F1 race, and the only Welsh driver to lead a championship Grand Prix, Tom Pryce had an exciting career ahead of him. He made his F1 debut at the 1974 Belgian Grand Prix with token racing in a car which could only qualify him in 20th,
Yeah, look at the
and would
back.
actually enjoy a decent race until lap 66 when Jo Schlesser crashed into him, forcing him to retire. This would not deter onlookers though, and he joined Shadow, who were already an established midfield team, and partnered up with Jean-Pierre Jarier. At his first race with Shadow at the 1974 Dutch Grand Prix, he qualified 11th, but would retire on the opening lap after being hit by the Hesketh of James Hunt, who was keen to make up for a poor start. Despite these mishaps, Pryce would score his first points in F1 at that year's German Grand Prix. As the seasons went by, he would score 2 podiums for the team at Austria in 1975 and Brazil in 1976. He also won the 1975 Race of Champions at Brands Hatch, being his only victory in an F1 event, whilst also
So bro seemed solid. Tom Pryce seemed like he could hoop.
qualifying in pole
was
position at the 1975
he could
British
drive.
Grand Prix. He was clearly a driver with a lot of talent that
Not
was
bad.
yet to be exploited, if only he had a car that was capable of securing victories. Lotus had even tried to sign him before in 1975, as he was viewed to have the same skills as Ronnie Peterson, but would cost the team less money. A deal was never reached, but Lotus continued to pay close attention to Pryce's progress, and were keen on him partnering up with Mario Andretti for 1978, as his Shadow contract ran out at the end of that year. This would have most likely come to be a reality if it wasn't for the events which took place at the
That
South
car is
African
so
Grand Prix
tough, bro.
on the 5th of March 1977.
What happened?
Tom Pryce had a difficult qualifying session, which only secured 15th on the starting grid, despite being the fastest driver on Wednesday practice. As the race got underway, Pryce had a poor start, and was running last by the end of the first lap. His unique skills behind the wheel were in full show once again, as he passed multiple cars over the next few laps, and was running 13th place by lap 18. On lap 22, Shadow teammate Renzo Zorzi pulled off to the left-hand side of the main straight after an engine failure, just after the brow of the hill in which the straight passes over. 2 track marshals on the other side of the straight were needed to assist Zorzi, who took some time before exiting the Shadow,
Oh
with
my
one of the
God.
marshals
They
equipped with a large fire extinguisher to tackle the small fire on the Shadow.
holy
As cars
crap.
passed by at 175 miles per hour, the 2 marshals rushed across the circuit to the stricken Shadow. I'll stop the
Oh
footage
my
there,
God.
because I simply cannot bring myself to show you what happens next.
Oh my
Some of you
God.
have seen what happens next, and the images of what follows is surely burned in your memories.
Oh my
And for
God.
those that haven't seen it, I will warn you, it is one of the most horrific scenes you will ever see in a Formula 1 event. The footage is available on YouTube, but if you decide to watch it, I will warn you once again, it truly is a horrific sight. The first marshal made it across the circuit,
I ain't
with
trying
the
to
second
see that.
following close behind.
I ain't trying to
The
see
second
that.
marshal was 19-year-old Janssen van Vuren, who was also carrying an 18-kilogram fire extinguisher. As the march of Hans Stuck went over the brow of the hill, Stuck managed to see the 2 marshals just in time to swerve right to avoid them. Pryce was close behind the march, and as Stuck moved to the right, Van Vuren was dead in line with the Shadow. There was absolutely no chance that Tom Pryce could swerve to avoid them, and Tom hit the marshal at 175 miles per hour,
Jeez.
killing the 19-year-old instantly, sending his body up into the air and landed in front of Zorzi's car.
Oh
This in itself was a horrific accident. That's only half of the story. After the impact, Tom Pryce's shadow continued down the straight at high speed and full throttle. It carried straight on through the first corner before hitting the barriers and impacting with the Ligier of Jacques Lafitte, sending both cars into the catch fencing. Enraged, having been taken out of the race, Jacques Lafitte got out of his Ligier and went to confront Tom Pryce. He walked up to the shadow and discovered there was not much left of him. The 27-year-old Tom Pryce was already dead. The 18-kilogram fire extinguisher that Van Vuren was carrying when he was hit by the shadow smashed into Tom's head, which would have most likely killed him instantly, meaning Tom was already dead as his car travelled down the straight. Janssen Van Vuren's body was so badly mutilated, he was only identified when the race director summoned all of the race marshals, and Janssen was the only one missing. As usual for the time, the race carried on, and Niki Lauda won his first race since his accident at the Nürburgring, initially delighted over what he described as his best victory of his career. But Lauda was told on the podium that Pryce had died, and his mood changed instantly, stating there was no joy after that. Pryce was buried in St Bartholomew's Church in Otford, Kent, the same church where he married his wife Nella just 2 years before. The finest driver ever to come from Wales, taken way before he reached his peak.
Holy crap, bro. I'm just gonna say, thank God he stopped it. I was not trying to see that full clip, man. I don't know. I wasn't doing that. No freaking way. No way I was gonna deal with that, man. No, nah. Oh my God, guys. Oh, Tom Pryce, rest in peace. And especially to a 19-year-old kid, man, too, man. Just trying to just do his job, be a hero.
And now we have come to the final accident in this video. And this incident at the 1973 Dutch Grand Prix is probably Formula One's darkest moment. The 25-year-old Roger Williamson was in his first year in Formula One.
Again,
having won the 1971 and 1972 British Formula 3 Championship titles.
Another rookie.
He clearly was a driver who had a lot of talent and a bright future ahead of him. After rejecting BRM, he joined March, where he made his debut at the 9th race of the 1973 season at Silverstone for the British Grand Prix. He qualified 22nd, which was pretty good going for a debutant, but the race was a disaster, as he ended up being involved in the infamous 9-car pile-up at the end of the first lap. Williamson and the rest of the drivers involved were all thankfully unhurt, but his March was a wreck and was unable to make the restart. The next race was at Zandvoort for the Dutch Grand Prix. The circuit had just seen some major safety upgrades, which included new barriers, a new control tower, the track was resurfaced, and the layout was slightly revised with a tighter right-hander at Panorama Box. Williamson would enjoy a slightly better qualifying, as he managed to place his March 18th on the grid, ahead of names such as Chris Amon and Mike Hailwood, and just behind the embassy of Graham Hill. By the time the race got underway, and after a handful of incidents had taken place, Ronnie Peterson was leading in the Lotus, and the race began to settle down. But by the end of the 8th lap, people in those grandstands would start to see a large plume of black smoke billowing from a location which was unclear at the time. What they or the organisers knew at the time was that it was actually a car. Roger Williamson passed through the flat-out S's at Hondenvlak at very high speed before a sudden tyre failure caused his March to spear off into the barriers at the right-hander, which led onto the straight preceding the flat-out tunnel Oost corner. The March was catapulted over 200 metres down the short straight, and its fuel tank ignited during the time when the car was travelling. It eventually came to rest upside down, in flames, and with Roger Williamson unhurt, but still trapped inside.
We know about this one. I think that was not Williamson, but the driver come over to help him. He's probably gonna say the name. But I remember we did a video about this one too. We're almost done, man. Holy God. Jeez. Those are the worst ones, like they're trapped in there. Like you're doing everything you can to potentially try to save it. To potentially save, your friend, your driver, whatever. Basically, your friend or teammate, whatever. And you can't. Like you're doing everything you can to fire extinguisher. Seem like it ain't working. Like, you're trying to tell them to help them out. Other cars are still going. But, what can the other cars do? Like, they can... I mean, at most, I would think, you just pull over and, help them out. But it's like, why is nobody stopping, though?
Close friend David Purley, who was just behind Williamson when the accident occurred, immediately stopped to help save the life of his friend. He rushed across the track and ran straight towards the burning marsh.
I hate it.
Desperate to save Roger's life, David tried to push the car right side up and get him out.
Couldn't even do it.
But nobody was helping him. 2 marshals came to the scene, but did nothing except stand there and watch, as David was forced to grab a fire extinguisher himself to attempt to put the fire out.
That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. No offense, but your marshals, like we have seen in these clips, marshals. We just saw in our last clip of Tom Pryce, the 19-year-old marshal, trying to do his job, gets killed. Rest in peace. Then we had here in this clip with Roger Williamson, 2 marshals standing right next to the driver. Was probably begging him and asking him to help him push the car over, try to save his friend. Just staying there and just seeing it happen. It's a shame. It's an absolute shame.
Which did nothing to control it. It is worth noting that none of the marshals were wearing fireproof clothing.
So I get that,
Neither had they been trained or equipped to deal with such accidents. Their main concern.
So how did they? So why weren't they trained though? So I get that. So I see now. They don't have the proper equipment and stuff like that. So yeah, I get it. Because you don't want them to get involved. The next thing you know, something bad happens to them. And hopefully, God, nothing. That hopefully that is not the case. So yeah, I mean, still, but if you're marshals, your job is to help. But if you're not trained, which I'm kind of confused why nobody trying to teach them, instances of what to do if a car is on fire or we have these crazy incidents. So I don't know. That was just kind of my 2 cents. You guys can probably share.
Was getting David Purley away from the fire, who still continued to try and save his friend, who was heard screaming for help from within the burning marsh. All the time this was going on, the race continued, and David even tried to get other drivers to stop and help. But none of them did, as many of them believed that the burning car was David's and not Williamson's. In the video that's playing for you here, it doesn't take much to see the amount of pain that David Purley went through in these moments, and he was in complete and utter despair. It took emergency services 8 minutes to arrive on scene to put the fire out, but by the time the fire was eventually extinguished,
it was too late.
Roger Williamson was already dead, having died of asphyxiation. The car was righted, a blanket thrown over the remains, and the race carried on as if nothing had happened. Despite all the changes they had made, Formula One had another fatality on its hands, but this time it was seen a lot differently than the rest. For many people, F1 had failed to save the life of Roger Williamson, whereby if there was adequate marshalling on hand to assist, Williamson would have had the chance of surviving.
That was the part I was trying to get at, is that like the adequate part, like if you had proper marshals who were properly trained. First of all, even I don't get why you have marshals out there at a event if you're not even trained. This is a F1 race, especially back then, in which we have seen drivers pass away, and we have marshals out there who aren't even properly trained on what to do.
Instead,
And you
he
see how
ripped the
much
safety
it hurt,
marshals
bro.
just standing and watching. Jackie Stewart won the race and was told by team owner Ken Tyrrell about what happened when Jackie pulled into the pit lane after the cool-down lap.
Williamson's dead. There's no lap of honour. Quiet presentation.
The pain seen in the eyes of Jackie Stewart, Francois Sever and James Hunt on the podium was clear to all who are watching. More efforts into safety had to be done, and after this horrifically sad incident, properly trained and equipped fire marshals would be stationed at every Grand Prix event.
And he's begging him to help him out, man. Dude saying, help
David
me.
Purley was also awarded the George Medal for his attempt at saving Roger Williamson's life in an act of great bravery. Purley continued in Formula 1 and also survived a huge accident at the 1977 British Grand Prix, where the impact was registered at 180 Gs after hitting a wall because his throttle was stuck wide open. This would be the highest G-force impact ever survived by a human being, until Karl Wendlinger survived a 360 G impact during the 1994 Monaco Grand Prix. David never returned to F1 racing again, and later took up aerobatics, where he unfortunately would die in a plane crash in 1985,
God
close
dang.
to his home in Bognor Regis, West Sussex.
God, Lee, man.
And now we have reached the end of this extremely sad episode. It hurt a lot to make, and I'm sure for a lot of you, it hurt to watch, and that's
Honestly.
understandable. You are human after all, but why does it hurt? Is it because we'll never know how good some of these drivers could have been? Or we'll never get another opportunity to meet them in person? Or perhaps it's the wonderful and sometimes funny stories that come from their careers. Like when Gerhard Berger set off a fire extinguisher in Senna's Adelaide hotel room at 3 o'clock in the morning. Why? Because he thought it was funny. It could have been for many different reasons that we miss these men. But somehow, it doesn't always have to be dark. We as fans were extremely lucky to even get to see them in action. And as fans, we shared common ground with these drivers, a love and passion for Formula 1. So I don't want to end this episode on a sad note. I want to end remembering the good times. The times where we got to see them doing what they did best. Racing in Formula 1.
Roland, quickly, there's a telephone call for you.
Hello, who is this? Oh, hey, Margaret! Hey, it's Roland here.
Ratatouille, Ratatouille.
And, we had so much fun, just outside the track, competing against one another, playing tennis, it was the same thing, we're just trying to kill each other,
On the team's 64th attempt, Marussia finally beat Caterham to score their first Formula 1 points.
Hi Jules, this is John. Mighty job, mate. Absolute mighty.
So, which place is registered the penalty? I think we have P9. I think we have P9. Very good race, Jules. Finally, we have a point.
Destined for just greatness. Jules, man. A lot of these drivers, honestly, were just destined to be great. And sadly, we're not going to be able to see that. We're not going to see that fulfilledly play out.
I think the tactics should have been for Senna to go for time. It's going to be too late. Wheel to wheel stuff. Look at this, they're almost touching.
Et Arnoux deuxième, mais Villeneuve le reprend. Ils vont se sortir. Ils sont passés 2 fois dans ce dernier tour.
It's childish. God, he playing damn football player, chugging through everybody.
Senna is getting close to him, and Senna is going to challenge for the lead. Ayrton Senna has got the lead.
That was amazing. Absolutely amazing. Very, very sad. Like, I mean, this one was probably rough just because of like how graphic a lot of it was. But I think this whole documentary was absolutely amazing. Top tier documentary. And, like we have done a few F1 documentaries already, like some that we have reacted to, but I mean they were all amazing. So I'm not gonna specify each one, but every single one, even this one, like all the documentaries that we have seen, including this one, have been absolutely amazing. It's crazy. It's really, really crazy to see how far F1 has came regarding these safety stuff. And just back then, just seemed like how ignorant at times F1 was in regarding player safety, like driver safety stuff like that. Like at times ignoring it or not doing the job that they should have been doing. And like you said, a lot of these could have been preventable, but a lot of these were just unfortunate bad luck, and it sucks. It sucks because a lot of these drivers, a lot of you guys probably grew up watching or seeing. A lot of you guys probably have some attachment to, and it means a lot more. But very good documentary, man. Very, very good documentary. As always, hope you guys did enjoy it. Don't forget to like and sub as well. Take care. Stay amazing. And as always, I'll talk to you guys soon. Peace.